All right, welcome back. So we're going to continue talking about simplifying expressions. And as you hopefully remember from the last video, the two things we need to do today to get expressions simplified are to combine our like terms and to get rid of parentheses. So to get rid of parentheses, we're going to be using our old friend from Unit 1, the distributive property. Okay? So you hopefully already have this definition in your notes. So this is just a reminder. The distributive property states that multiplying the sum by a number is the same as multiplying each addend, each part of the sum, by the number and then adding the products. So the idea was if we have two numbers being added or subtracted in parentheses, we have something that's multiplying that parentheses, we can just take the part outside and multiply it by each part individually. Okay, so if I have 3 times 2 plus 5, I do 3 times 2 plus 3 times 5, I'll get the same answer. To verify that works, let's try it out. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 times 3 is 21. Okay, 3 times 2, if we're doing this individually, is 6. 3 times 5 is 15. 6 plus 15 is also 21. Okay, so this works. Now, when we just have numbers, it's great that it works, but we don't really need to use it. It can help with mental math and such, but we can just add these numbers and then multiply. We have that option. The reason when this becomes more useful is when we can't just follow our order of operations. Okay, if I had something like this, well, order of operations tells me I have to add first and then multiply by -2. The problem is I can't add 5 and x. I don't know what x is. Okay, so I'd get stuck here and I couldn't go any further forward in simplifying. But if I use the distributive property to rewrite it, then I'm not confined to these parentheses anymore, and it'll help me out. You'll see that in some examples coming up. Okay. So what we did from Unit 1 is we took the number outside, multiplied it by everything inside to rewrite this. So -2 times x is -2x. -2 times 5, well, negative times a positive is a negative. So again, I could write plus -10, but just the easy way of writing that is -10. Okay, remember, that's what subtraction does. It adds a negative number. Okay, so if you end up with a negative number, just do minus that number. Okay, here I got the part being multiplied on the other side, but that doesn't matter because order doesn't matter with multiplication. I have 2 times x is 2x. This -3, I'm going to change it to plus -3. I always want to think about it as adding the opposite. 2 times -3 is -6. That's -6. Okay. Changing this to adding the opposite is especially important when the number outside is negative, so otherwise it's really easy to get it mixed up with your signals. But if I change that and just think about distributing, I have -4 times positive 2x, and negative times a positive is negative. 4 times 2 is 8, and then there's an x. Okay, over here, -4 times -4 is positive 16, so I get a plus 16. So you see those two negatives end up canceling out. Okay, so that's how we use this in Unit 1. Okay, so when we're simplifying expressions, if there's parentheses, that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to distribute, so we aren't confined to having to try to do what's in those parentheses first. And then we're going to combine our like terms like we did in the last video. Okay, so here I have parentheses. Let's start that process. I'm going to go through, change any subtraction I have to adding the opposite. I don't have any subtraction in this case, so I'm good there. So I'll just go right to distributing. Okay, so this -5n is going to stay the same. I'm distributing to everything inside the parentheses, so 3 times 6 is 18, and then 3 times 7n is 21n. Okay, so I got my distributing done first. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. I see I have an n term here and an n term here. -5n plus 21n. I'm going to add those numbers, -5 and 21. The 21, the positive, is bigger. If I subtract them, I see it's 16 bigger. So that's 16n. Okay. This 18 does not have any like terms, so it just stays in 18. So 16n plus 18 is the simplified version of this. And again, if you don't believe me, you could take any number you want for n. If you plug it in here and plug it in here, you'll get the same thing, because these are equivalent expressions. This one is just simpler. All right, here I have subtraction. I'm going to change that to adding the opposite. And I'll distribute. All right, the number outside the parentheses is this -5. So I'm distributing the -5. Okay, you might see hopefully why changing this to adding a negative was important here, because it gets distributed in. Okay, the 10 stays the same. -5 times positive 9n is negative 45n. Okay, -5 times -9 is positive 45. Okay, I only have the one n term, but I do have the two constants I can add together. So remember, we're going to write the n term first, negative 45n. And if I add those together, 10 plus 45 is 55. All right, so why don't we pause here? Actually, I'm going to do this middle one. This middle one's a little bit weird. I'm going to have you try these first and the third one. But this middle one is weird because I have -2n minus, and then there's no number outside the parentheses. So it's not clear what's being distributed. Okay, so we have something to distribute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these parentheses by the only number I can multiply by that doesn't change anything. Okay, hopefully you remember from Unit 1, that number is a 1. Right? Anything times 1 is itself. So I'm going to make that -1. Okay. Now when I go through and change it to adding the opposite, I have plus -1, plus -1. So what I'm actually doing is I'm distributing a -1 to both of these. Okay. So -1 times 9 is -9. -1 times -10n is positive 10n. So really it just ends up distributing the minus sign. Okay, this -2n stays the same. And now I can combine. I got a -2n and a positive 10n. Those add up to 8n. Then I have a -9, so I'm going to write that as -9. 8n minus 9 is how that simplifies. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video here, come up with answers for this first one and this last one, and then restart and see if we get the same thing. Okay, hopefully these are the answers that you got. When we distribute the 10, we get a 60a and a -10. 60a and the 9a add up to 69a. Remember, plus -10, simpler way of saying that it's just -10. Okay, this one was a little more challenging. We have the -9 times the 6m is -54m. Okay, remember thinking about this as -3, so -9 times -3 is positive 27. 6 times 1 was 6. 6 times 4m is 24m. So we had two sets of parentheses. It's okay, we just had to do this distributing twice. Distributed here, and we distributed here. That got rid of all my parentheses. Then I could combine my m terms, -54m and positive 24m, gives me -30m. And 27 plus 6 is 33. So I end up with -30m plus 33. All right, that's all I got for you. Make sure you ask questions if you got them.